Welcome back to Alaska Voices. My name is Mike DeLue. I'm a research professional here at the International Arctic Research Center, and I'm here with my friend and colleague, Arlo Davis. How's it going, Arlo?
Hey, Mike. Good. Thanks for having me. I also work here at IARC alongside you. I'm the engagement coordinator here. Been here a little over 3 years, and it's great here.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You were also the subject of a couple of recordings back during season 1. We're going to hear one of those today. How have you liked seeing the Alaska Voices project grow over the past couple of years?
I've been keeping my eye on it ever since I did my first conversation. It's nice to see it growing and adapting.
This is the last episode in our series, and today we're going to hear a number of conversations around the theme of home. A lot about the location, but also there's this thread of your professional home. These are largely folks who are involved in science in one way or another, but also creative home and intellectual home. What does home mean to you, and what are you looking forward to hearing today?
I feel like in a lot of ways, that's like the question. What does home mean to you? And I say that as an Alaskan because so many people move to Alaska and become Alaskan. You don't have to be born here to be Alaskan. And so for me, home can be many places. Home can be the climate that one is used to, the outside physical environment climate. Home can be the intellectual grounds that we feel comfortable growing our ideas in. Home can be the people that we're used to. So for me, I count Alaska just as one whole big state as home because I've been all over the state.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have met a lot of people here who are from Alaska writ large, born in Nome and moved to Sitka and then go to school and high school in Anchorage and then university in Fairbanks. It's a big place. The whole place is home. You know, as someone who is coming from outside, it's my 7th year in Alaska. I spent a lot of my younger years, my 20s, moving around, but none of those places would I have ever called home, or I never would have said I was from those places when someone asked me, you know. I lived in Queensland. I never would have said, oh, I'm a Queenslander. I lived in Manchester, and only in the pub when you were being particularly good would people refer to you as a Mancunian with this particular accent. But definitely say I'm Alaskan now when people ask where I'm from. The first conversation we're going to hear is from a pair of colleagues of ours. This was recorded by myself in February of 2025, just last year, between Julian Dan and Margaret Anamak Rudolph. The conversation's called Paths to the Arctic Converge in Co-Production.
Hi, my name is Julian Dan. I'm 29, and I'm talking with Margaret today. We are friends and colleagues.
I'm Margaret Rudolph. My Nupit name is Anamak. I just turned 40. We're in Fairbanks, Alaska, and I'm with Julian Dan. And yes, we are friends, colleagues, have a lot of intersections of research and research interests.
So, Margaret, why did you start working in the Arctic?
So I grew up in Fairbanks and in Anchorage, and I'm in Nupit. My family originally comes from King Island. I always wanted to be a scientist, and I really wanted to help people with large problems, complex, large problems. And then I ended up in engineering because I thought that would be that type of work when you actually became a scientist. Turns out engineers don't do that.
What in your childhood reminded you of what value did you see in scientists as you're getting into this?
My dad always kind of pushed me that way a little bit. We'd always watch nature on Sunday. He'd always be that advocate of just you can do whatever. You can be a scientist. You could be a race car driver. But it was always kind of that way. And then he's an academic. He only has his master's, but it's in philosophy. And then he worked as I was growing up for the university at the community college. And so I think it was always that way. But I think kind of that's one part of the thing. And the other part is that you're required to take Arctic engineering at UAF. And that's kind of when I started to understand permafrost and how much it was around me. And then it kind of went off from there.
That's interesting. I didn't know that UAF had that core requirement of taking an engineering permafrost class. I mean, it's ubiquitous in Fairbanks, permafrost, and thinking about it and how the landscape is changing. But as someone who grew up outside of Alaska, that's not something I would have thought.
And not only that, what if I tried talking about permafrost in like the lower 48 to the public, they'd be like, what's that? I think now it's very fairly recognized, but not back in the day. But yeah, you have to take Arctic engineering. It's a requirement to get licensure in Alaska.
Yeah, I went to a college in Connecticut in the lower 48. Part of the reason that I went to that school was I wanted to go to a small liberal arts school so that I had the flexibility to like take anything, having kind of a general basis in a lot of different things, and especially ones that are related to like where you are. It's kind of cool.
I mean, some aspects of academia is like being able to do whatever you want and having that creativity and practicality. I don't really think it's necessarily like people want you to fit in a certain box and do certain things. And that's kind of where I really struggled with studying permafrost in the engineering context. Was it was still very much what's considered like post-positivist is the term, like the classic scientific methodology. You do theory verification, create a hypothesis, and you test it type things. And it's not really applied. And not only that, like applied is considered less than like applied research, working for an actual solution on things and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so, I mean, it sounds like kind of that foray into engineering really shaped the scientist that you are now in terms of like thinking about working with people in different ways, in interdisciplinary ways, transdisciplinary ways, and doing co-production between different knowledges.
Yeah. In a weird way, like I look at my academic career and it seems like it's all over the place because I also went into like science communication, education outreach type things, and then circled back to studying methodology and co-production knowledge, which is what I got my PhD in.
Yeah, with my scientific career, I've definitely always been pursuing the theme of like application and like looking for what's the next most applied thing I can do and like opportunistically moving in that direction. And so I studied astronomy and physics in undergrad and gradually made my way back to Earth. I did some stuff on Mars, I did some stuff in Earth's atmosphere, and then I switched and started doing Arctic research in the last 7 years.
Why did you make that switch?
Yeah, I think growing up as a little kid in Portland, Oregon, a lot of people have these ideas of what Alaska is in the lower 48. I remember that was a 4th grade class project to follow the Iditarod and make like a poster about a state. All of that was Alaska. And so I just, for some reason, was really enamored with the idea of Alaska. Specifically, it was coming from it, like the concept of a place full of nature. Yeah, so I just always had this idea of what Alaska was like and wanted to go. And then eventually I was working at Los Alamos National Lab doing a summer internship focused on what Earth's aurora looked like. I was thinking aurora, I was thinking polar. And then I was like, as a kid, I was always so interested in it. So I just reached out to someone who worked at Los Alamos and worked in Arctic science and was like, hey, I don't have a background in this, but I have these skills. And that's how I got started on working in Alaska. How I picture Alaska has drastically changed from what I was picturing when I was in 4th grade.
In what ways?
Well, I brought in this book just to remind myself. This is Contesting the Arctic, Politics and Imaginaries in the Circumpolar North. And it's just this book that I read my first semester for a class, Geography in the Circumpolar North. And it puts these lenses and just helps categorize them in terms of how people view the Arctic. They view it as the last frontier. They view it as a resource state. They view it as an indigenous homeland. They view it as like a geopolitical battle. They view it in all these different ways that in some respects, whether it's through people's belief in them, it becomes true. And all of these things exist at the same time. That's always just kind of helped me envision Alaska and kind of place the work I want to do in those different spheres.
And how's that influenced the research that you did for your PhD and what you want to do in the future?
Yeah, I'm currently a PhD student, and my PhD is a combination of a couple of different hard skill, technical, remote sensing and satellite imagery processing to understand how the environment is changing. And the other side of it is understanding how big science projects work in the Arctic, how they work in the communities that they visit. Because a lot of what I've learned is about the academic history of exploitation in communities in the Arctic and parachute science, and trying to teach myself as much as I can such that when I am in a position in which I am leading a project or I'm part of a project, that I have input to make sure that things on the project are done correctly and advanced.
This is the way my academic career has went. It's always been in the Arctic. And so I've always kind of wondered what it's kind of like in other situations. And I can't really tell how much is different, like a sense of the community and the culture, because there's definitely these different levels where you have people that are researchers that keep their head down. And then there's people that really work within the state or within a particular community or region. They work pretty closely with that. That kind of depends, if you're very sociable, and I think it also depends where you end up going, but also your support system. If you work for an agency, there's that aspect of being a bit more mission-driven for certain people, so those are people you talk to. And then there's also this other level within Arctic research, which is the international, pan-Arctic aspect. And so I end up working more recently in the international sphere.
I am very soon going to be moving back to the lower 48 for I'm not sure how long. I'm going to be moving to a large city where there are so many people who have moved there and who didn't grow up there, don't have necessarily a large attachment to the place that they live other than to their community within the city. That's just something I'm thinking about a lot right now, is how do I get that sense of place in somewhere else, and how much I would like my work to keep working in the Arctic and keep that tie, but not knowing how to do that from afar.
I've thought about that aspect of moving as well, and just the opportunity, more education, more mentorship. But I go visit places and I'm I don't see what I value, both in the sense of as a researcher, as a person, but also as an Indigenous person. Visually, I don't see that reflected back at me when I go to other places like that.
In Fairbanks, there's a large sense of camaraderie about getting through winter and about seeing the seasons change. And there's such drastic differences in seasons. And I don't think those things will be quite the same in another place, that connection to the land there.
So, what do you make of that conversation, Arlo?
The feeling of home was strong. It was it was being approached from outside on one end and from the inside on the other end. I think it's fair to say Julian came to Alaska from outside and developed a sense of home here, and that Margaret is from Alaska and developed a sense of her idea home here. What she was studying is almost like two ships going on different directions, and they intersect for a brief while here at UAF. Something kind of like that. Yeah.
It did strike me a little bit how that sense of home, I think we think of it in terms of stories and emotions, but it also, there's impact in the science, right? As Julian was discussing, understanding how large science projects that are not necessarily run by people in Alaska interact with Alaskans when they're here. That's something you have to study here, right? That's something that you have to be embedded in the place, and you have to build trust with people to have them be willing to tell you what went poorly and what went well, to trust you to carry that forward. Or just the engineering example, right? The fact that you need to take a specific Arctic engineering class, which makes perfect sense, but it's very centered in its place in a way that, maybe there's a Pennsylvania engineering class somewhere that's very specific to the environmental needs of Pennsylvania, but none of my friends or colleagues from back home where I'm from in Pennsylvania have ever mentioned such a class. And so I also like that comment about getting through winter, the camaraderie of getting through winter. We're all still reeling from this past winter in Fairbanks.
What Julian mentioned, the camaraderie that develops based on the climate is one of the big parts of what makes Alaska so great and so welcoming, because we all know that we're all going through the same winters and the same summers, and it's bonding.
There's a sense of everybody being in it together. It doesn't mean there aren't conflicts, but it does mean that, we're all dealing with the same intense winter, whether you're doing some kind of job that requires a suit or you're a farmer, an engineer, a mechanic. Like, we're all going through this if you're here in the winter.
Yeah. It creates for a widely acknowledged, accepted, shared connection. Margaret was pointing out what happens outside of Alaska and outside of that shared understanding.
Julian, too, he mentioned the ways people see the Arctic writ large and Alaska more specifically in pop culture. If you're not from Alaska, like Alaska's polar bears and mountains and cold. Rah. And if you're from here, it's like, yeah, it's that. But it's also a lot of other stuff.
One of my favorite questions I got when I was a teenager, when I was down in lower 48 was, do I know what pizza is? Julian I guess he was focused on the outside too, and he wanted to be responsible about the work that he's engaged in.
So you had a chat, actually, with another colleague of ours, Krista Herringa. Do you remember this conversation with her?
Oh, distinctly. It was a really fun conversation to have, and was one of the only conversations I've had where I went into it with one idea of the person that I was having this conversation with, and then came out of it with a totally new idea. Me and her became friends during the recording.
Oh, well, let's listen to Arlo and Krista become friends. This was recorded in April of 2018 by Jesse Young Robertson, one of the OGs of Alaska Voices. And it's called Bringing Global Experiences Back Home.
My name is Krista Herringa. I am 32 years old, and I am recording a story with my friend.
My name is Arlo Nahruk Davis. I am 36 years old, and I am recording a story with my professional associate. We're buddies.
We're buddies. Could you tell me a little bit about where you grew up, who your family is?
I mostly grew up in Nome with my dad, and then would go out to Selawik once or twice a year to go visit my mom. Toured the lower 48 for a little bit in a Volkswagen van that was named Van Gogh. And we were in Moscow in 91 when the coup happened. And it was all fun and games to me as I was a kid, because I was just completely in the hands of my dad.
And your mom's from Selawik?
My mom is from Selawik. Her mother, my grandmother, was an illegitimate child back when that was really not cool. So she was adopted by my namesake. My Eskimo name is Nahruk. All arrows point to her dad being a Jewish guy that went up to that region and started a couple of stores. And so I've got Jewish ancestry on my mom's side. And then her dad, my grandpa, has some roots to the interior in the Athabascan country, but I don't know a whole lot about that. And then my dad is from Montana. He's got roots that go back to Italy.
Sounds like we have a lot of overlapping roots and stories. I was born in Fairbanks, raised here, but mostly my mom brought us all around the world, starting when I was 7. She's a nurse, now a nurse midwife, but she did a lot of medical-related things all around. The first place I went outside of the US was British Guiana, northern part of South America.
Do you remember the first time you experienced being out of doors while it's dark and also warm and possibly windy?
That trip, kind of like here in Alaska, the rivers are the roads. And so we'd travel at night, and it was a different sky than what I'd seen here. I still am fascinated by night skies. When I was in high school, my parents lived in Australia for like 3 months, and we went up to this place in the north outside of town called Port Hedland, and there was no trees, no topography. It was just really, really flat where we were. So you could see the stars from horizon to horizon, and you could see the Big Dipper upside down on the bottom of the horizon.
Weird.
It was so weird. You enrolled in a graduate program here at UAF. What was your motivation, and what were you hoping to get out of that experience?
So I was in my last year getting my English degree down at UAA in Anchorage with a dance minor. Finally ended up deciding that I would shop around for grad schools, but by then most of the application deadlines had passed. And so I thought, well, what's going on up in Fairbanks? And I bumped into the Arctic and Northern Studies program.
Once in the graduate school educational flow, what was your experience like?
Well, let's see. So at the grad school orientation pizza night, I asked the organizers for some mic time. I encouraged everyone to share their knowledge and expertise internationally in order to build strong international peaceful relationships, because I've been in war-torn countries. We were in Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, when they were being bombed, and all we had to eat for like 6 weeks straight was kasha, buckwheat. Sometimes we had butter. Sometimes we had honey. That was really good. Sometimes we'd get an egg or two. Those were really good. And one time we were downtown at the market, and there was 2 big summer sausages hanging up for sale. And my dad bought one of the sausages and some bread. Bread and sausage still is like one of my favorite things to eat. It just gets me. But I asked him years later why he didn't buy both of the sausages. And he said that he left the other one for someone else to buy. So I've got this visceral experience of war. And I make this impassioned plea to all of these new grad students from all over the world. And it was crickets afterwards. My next big eye-opener was in one of my fall classes. The book that I was kind of assigned was on a famous living Alaska Native person, and I thought it was a horrible book and wanted to give a presentation that highlighted where I thought the book was going off, and also do it in a way that leaned on my dance experience. So I had this song by Die Antwoord. This rapper starts out, he's going off, and then the record scratch sound comes on, and you can hear them saying, "Oh, hey, what's going on?" And they're like, "Oh, that's just not working." And I wanted to use that song in my presentation, but my professor didn't like the song because of its lewd, crude language. And that's when I really started to learn that power dynamics in the university are alive and well.
Similar to you, I've also spent a lot of time in war-torn areas and also think a lot about the implications of war, and often wondering what brings war, and when people no longer can understand each other or connect. So I'm just curious from you, like having that hit against these really hard interactions with people at this institution, and does that motivate you more? Or does it demotivate you more in your work?
The latter.
In your future?
I mean, both, I guess. But when I kind of figured out that I don't need a master's degree to get my hands dirty in the village relocation work, I kind of lost most of my motivation to care about anything grad school. I think I've gotten a lot more quiet, and I feel a lot less starry-eyed. I guess I'm looking for where I can be productive, looking for the crowd or the circle or the platform or something, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does. But you are finding your niches. So it seems like from an outsider view, like you're honing into that.
Yeah, I like to think so.
Just want to thank you for taking part of your day to sit and share part of your story with me. And
I think we just became better friends, Krista.
Wow. So that was 8 years ago? What's changed in the past 8 years for you?
I became a dad. Yeah, we moved back to Kotzebue and then moved back to here to Fairbanks. And Fairbanks has become a lot more my home. In that recording, I was just here for school and for work. And now I'm really setting down some roots.
What's it like to raise kids in Fairbanks? To raise your kids in Fairbanks, anyway?
I think this conversation between me and Krista was focused a lot on time because me and Krista were both talking a lot about our past experiences and travels all over the world. And being a parent here in Fairbanks, for me, I'm constantly comparing it to my childhood, and it's so different. I grew up in Nome, where it's always windy, and it changes everything. The wind, the snow is different, the summers are different, everything's different.
Yeah, I was out paddling on the lake last night, and there might have been a 1-knot breeze pushing me across the lake, and I had the thought, wow, windy here today.
Yeah.
That's the Fairbanks metric right there for you.
We joke about it at home when the wind picks up a little bit to like 5-6 miles an hour. We joke about Fairbanksians and we say, oh, this must be like a blizzard for Fairbanksians, because our reference point is still the Northwest Arctic. This idea of home, but then relating it to time is what really came out in this conversation we just heard. Sort of like with Julian and Margaret, they were finding their home, their academic home. Julian was kind of forward-looking to his new physical home, and here with me and Krista, it's like, I don't know. There's something about that sense of time connected to home. I'm not sure what it is.
Well, and the other thing that's happened in the past 8 years is you've become a working professional, staff member here at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And, in this conversation, we're hearing a little bit about how you were butting up against some portions of the academic system. I'm kind of curious now, you've been here 3.5 years. You've gotten a peek behind the curtain for both better and worse. I imagine you understand a lot more about how academia functions. Are you feeling like you're starting to find your professional home?
Yes. Back then, when this conversation with Krista was recorded, I was fresh out of bachelor's, my undergrad at UAA, jumped right into grad school. I was just barely entering this process of post-undergraduate academic involvement. I was going through growing pains, and now I've been working here at the International Arctic Research Center for over 3 years, and I think going through those growing pains back then helped me understand my work here better.
I think this does lead pretty well into our final conversation for this episode between Serena Wesson and Lloyd Pikok Jr. They both work for Ukpiagvik Inupiaq Corporation's Science, UIC Science arm. They support a lot of science work that happens up in Ukpiagvik. And I recorded this conversation with them just a couple of months ago. This conversation will be part of the next season of Alaska Voices, but our radio listeners are getting a little sneak peek.
Hello, my name is Serena Wesson. I am 27 years old. I am currently in Santa Fe, New Mexico recording. I'm usually based in Anchorage, Alaska. I am the Outreach and Engagement Manager with UIC Science. I was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska. My dad was a bush pilot and my mom's from Costa Rica. And my relationship with my conversation partner is my work friend.
Hi, I'm Lloyd Pikok Jr. I'm 29 years old. I was born and raised, currently live in and work out of Barrow, Alaska. I am a subsistence hunter and fisherman. I'm a professional photographer, and I also work at UIC Science as the Assistant Manager of Logistics and Support. And Serena is my coworker, one of my bosses, and a dear friend.
What's your story and how did you end up where you are?
Media, creativity, photo-wise, where I live is really unique and pretty, and not everyone really sees it that way, which is a little heartbreaking because, that's where I'm from. It's where I love to be. It's what I think about every day. I grew up going to my family's hunting allotment or our traditional use hunting grounds, however you want to frame that. Yeah, a lot of fond memories there. And that's kind of what inspired capturing what was around me, because I felt really selfish that I got to see these incredible things, experience these incredible experiences, and then that's where it ended. I really felt like everyone should see a cow and calf caribou, or these incredible northern light shows that turn the snow green, or more than dozens of type of birds we get. That's kind of when Instagram was on the rise, and you'd scroll and hashtag Barrow would be these ugly descriptions of there's nothing there, it's barren, it's a wasteland, it's desolate, it's empty. And I was like, that's none of those things. You just aren't looking in the right spaces or through the right lens, pun intended. It was and still is my mission to change that narrative and to show the world how pretty and dynamic and diverse and just overall beautiful my world is.
I think that it's easy to just have your internalized thoughts of what a place looks like or hear what other people say about things and not branch out and see things for yourself. When I was 16 and I got a car, I would kind of stubbornly drive to a mountain and I'd say I want to go up there with a chewy granola bar and a plastic bottle of water for 8 hours. Fortunately, we never had any problems or encounters with bears, and that kind of led me into learning more about safety and doing things properly, which is very important in field work, and especially when you're working with people that might not be from Alaska or have all of these prior experiences. But I think that each person kind of has the opportunity to create their own journey within the world, to have their own narrative of where a place is or what that means to them or how they see it, that maybe they are also able to share and can be different than, I don't know, what people say or what they're told.
You said your mom's from Costa Rica and you live in Alaska. That puts you in a really unique spot where you more or less experience two extremes.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Everything's a choice, right? Everything we do is a choice, whether we go or stay, whether we do or don't, right? And so you have the choice to be in Costa Rica, but you choose to spend your time in Alaska. And I'm curious why.
After self-teaching myself how to hike, I ended up getting really into rock climbing in college. After falling in love with climbing and taking a road trip, one of those semesters, I ended up doing a crevasse rescue course, which got me out onto glaciers. I also learned how to ice climb, which was super cool because that's entirely different. After this climbing road trip and all this other stuff, I was okay, I gotta do classes again. And I was calculating the forces on beams, and I was also working full-time and doing other stuff. And I realized I cannot sit in a cubicle in fluorescent lighting and calculate the forces of beams. I need to be outside. So I basically switched my major from civil engineering to essentially Arctic environmental geophysics with a minor in math. So it was all over the place. I like to play outside, and I don't really care if I'm taking measurements in the cold on the snow or climbing some beautiful route to get to the top of something. I think that Alaska is a beautiful place and it gives us opportunity to explore and learn from the land, whether that's through recreation or subsistence or collecting data. I think that it's a very unique environment. Southeast is very different from the interior, from South Central, and from the North Slope region. So I think that, I don't know, it's special. I graduated and I Googled cryosphere job because I was like, I liked Arctic and I liked cold and I wanted to be outside.
What's cryosphere?
Yeah, so the cryosphere is the part of the world's Earth that contains all of the Earth's frozen water. So that's like snow, ice, glaciers, permafrost. And then I got really lucky and I ended up doing snow science stuff at UAF for about 3 years after. And a part of that was doing research up in Utqiagvik out on the BEO on Elson Lagoon and on the Chukchi sea ice, which, I don't know, was super awesome as well.
I'm just curious now. I don't really know much about snow science. Like, I know like there's albedo, but is there like a physics aspect? Is there like a chemistry aspect?
There's all of it. I was doing snow science ed outreach, but I was also working on field work, which was kind of like atmospheric science stuff because we were basically working with this project called Salvo, where we would measure the change between a very, very white environment. We were measuring the incoming albedo from the change of a very, very white snow-covered surface to how that would change to a brown tundra and then go into a green tundra surface. But we were kind of documenting the change and the rates of that in these different tundra and sea ice environments. And during the fieldwork process, we would measure like surface chemistry, snow depth, temperature, all of these different aspects to kind of create a better idea of the changes that are happening in the environment.
So what's happening right now, at least what I'm observing personally, the snow we have this year up in Barrow is different than previous years, right? Right now it's kind of soft and fluffy, and it's not really setting. It's not like rock hard frozen drifts that we can easily travel over. It's soft and there's not really a bottom. So like when we went to Wainwright, for example, we were towing what I consider a heavy load because I'm a little guy. And it was challenging with the soft snow because every time we'd stop, it would be really difficult from like me and my snow machine to get going because it would just sink and sink and sink. And then finally we would get going. And I really believe that's why we had like machine problems, because we were just working these machines way harder than they needed to be worked because the snow was just soft and not set. I guess my question for you is, since you studied snow, why would it change, I guess, now? Or like what would cause snow to like not set, or what makes snow set?
Has it been windy?
Not really, no.
I think a part of that is because it's usually like you think of the hard snow and you see these wind slabs and drifts. And if there hasn't been any wind, it's harder to compress. The snow type up north is very different than the snow that we have in like the South Central region. When you think of snow, between its little arms, what's in the snow?
It's air.
There's air, yeah. So snow has a lot of air in it. If snow needs to turn harder or eventually into ice like it does on a glacier, all of this air, whether that's through gravity and many, many years of snow falling, or whether that's through maybe wind compressing it, in a more firm way over time, all of this air is able to escape. So was your problem with the snow, or was it the air in the snow? I think it was the air in the snow.
Okay, that does make sense because at least to my knowledge, we've only had 1 or 2 proper blizzards. For a frame of reference, last season, the season before my ice fishing season, we were checking our nets and zero visibility pretty much for a month and a half straight. It was a lot of fun. I enjoy storms, but that's how the last 2 seasons were. It was storm after storm, blizzard after blizzard. And This year, it was like a pleasant ice fishing season. There was like no wind. It was bluebird days, like sun was out. I don't want to say like I didn't enjoy it.
Pleasant.
I enjoyed it a lot, but it's just seeing how days like that affect like the bigger picture is it's interesting to me.
When you're going out and you're hunting and you're fishing and you're outside, you're still like taking observations from the world. And through being outside, you're obviously like learning of the land. And we're talking about this link of, I think, safety and like being outside and also being a scientist and taking observations. I think we drew a triangle at one point. What's your take with those three and your relationship with them?
I always say the land has been and always will be my biggest teacher. I can confidently say I would not be who I am today, where I'm at right now, if it wasn't for everything I learned from my dad, from my uncles, from my Appa and Akka out at, our fish camp. And then even further past that, going by myself, just spending real time just alone with my thoughts, just developing and working through ideas. I always say when you live small, you think small. And then you go out like on our land where people say there's nothing, but really it's just, you can't help but be open and think because there's the energy of the emptiness it's almost like the opposite of nothing. I don't really know how to describe it. I've been working on this idea actually of like this fourth dimension-y connection feeling. And I've really been trying to put words to what that's like if you don't really experience it.
Like how you feel when you are outside?
Yeah, more or less, but at least for my case specifically, where my outside is a place that's been in my family there's 3 generations of cabins there, yeah, but it's been in my family like since the words I'm going to use are kind of a meme now, but since time immemorial, right? Like we call it Little House on the Prairie. That spot has been in my family since like creation. And so my outside is just a little different, I guess. This last season of my life, I've experienced a lot of loss, like a lot of loss. And when I really start missing, I guess, the presence of those I've lost, I can always go back to our common ground, a fish camp where we all have memories together. And then I feel more or less their presence. And I think that's maybe my take on that feeling of connection, right? Is it's not just connection with the land itself, but the connection through the land to these people and family members, individuals I really looked up to and still wish I could learn from. Does that answer your
place definitely holds like memories and feeling, and a lot of my time outside I couldn't connect like that, but I feel like it's been more exploratory, so I've had to kind of create those own experiences with my friends or my like close direct family myself. So I feel like it can hold history, but you can also create your own memories. I don't know what word I'm trying to pick here.
And time with yourself is important too. Like, and I know a lot of people are like afraid of not being alone, but just spending time with yourself because, we don't want to be in positions of like weakness or vulnerability. 'Cause, we're generally afraid of being vulnerable, but I think that's where a lot of growth happens. And that's why I really enjoy being at my cabin because there's no distractions that we've all created, but I always say it's like you're your most natural self, right? You're present and you just get to think and exist. There's no obligations except just to be.
I think there's also like really important ways of like finding community in like these experiences as well, because sometimes it's not necessarily safe to be out alone, for instance, in a storm by yourself. The Alaskan environment is harsh and it's humbling. And if you act wrong, you can trigger an avalanche. Or if you're paddling on a river and you hit a rapid wrong, you can flip, you can swim. You want hopefully somebody's boat who can help lift you back out or so you can swim to shore.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. My best friend right now, we didn't grow up together at all. We didn't talk to each other in school, but his family's fishing grounds were a few miles upriver from where my family hunts. And so for maybe 2 straight years, every summer, his family would just come by my cabin and say hi. And the act of coming to say hi really developed our friendship. And now, we always have each other's back. We're like the best of friends. He's who I went to Wainwright with. Like, I would trust him with anything. And that relationship developed just by, having cabins on the same river. So
You're talking about how you're learning from the lands and making connections. I'm sure other people are as well. Is there anything that you are like envisioning or hoping for the future?
So I was really never like a believer in like VR or anything like that until another creative friend of mine brought his Oculus 3 to my house and we played this ridiculous zombie game or whatever. But that exposure really inspired, I guess, the potential there is with storytelling and experiences. And like me, myself, I'm still trying to learn my creative identity and like, am I actually a filmmaker? Am I actually a photographer? Like what? I know I have that gift of creativity. I just don't know what the right medium is to express that, right?
You're aware of many hats. That's what you say.
Yeah.
You can do it all.
Yeah, what I'm working on now, it's called 180 VR, like stereoscopic 3D experiences. My Canon R5C with the 5.2 millimeter VR 180 lens. You can create like VR content with that kit. It really opened my eyes to like what's possible. We have a lot of stories like in our culture that I think would be incredible if you could like get in and walk around and experience instead of like reading or watching. Something that popped into my head was, you've seen Big Miracle, right? When the gray whales got stuck under the ice.
Dude, actually, that was filmed at my high school and middle school. While I was in middle school, they had a shutdown class. That's Alaska for you as well. Like, it's a small world up here.
How cool would it be if you could just like walk around that scene and like, see the whales popping up out of the squares they're cutting out of the ice? Or something that's popular with my day job is trying to explain the scale of a bowhead whale. Instead of trying to explain the scale, like you put on a VR set and you're like looking at that scale. Experiences like that is kind of what I have been wanting to create. And I've been working in like reality capture and Unreal Engine 5 and, I have the 360 camera now and that VR. So I think maybe that could be my niche. And so that's something I want to explore.
No, that sounds awesome. No, that's a great idea. We've been talking about place and sharing stories and creativity. And do you have any final thoughts on to how they relate to maybe you and your journey and what you want to see for the future?
No matter how big or small or ridiculous, if you have a dream, chase it. That's what I did. That's what I continue to do. And don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to ask these questions. Just get out and do it. And who knows where it'll take you.
Yeah, I definitely think it's important to take time for yourself and also be present, like see the world around you, explore, make observations, and create connections and community, connections with your environment and with other people. And I want everyone to know each other and do cool stuff. So I think that creating these connections, both with the land and with people and recreation, and using that to inform like fieldwork and safety and all this stuff, everything kind of goes hand to hand in some weird way. And I'm excited to see what we can continue to do.
Wow. That was a fun one.
Yeah. We've been focusing and narrowing down on this idea of home and time. he explicitly named it the fourth dimension, and he was trying to figure out how to describe it.
That's a different time scale to understand your home on than I feel very at home here in Fairbanks. I go back all of 6 years.
Yeah. But they're both home.
Yeah.
That's what makes it great. It's a matter of scale, but they're both on the same scale, the scale of home.
Yeah. It's interesting to see these folks find their home in science in different ways. You know, both of them are critical to doing the kind of research that we do, that all of the people around us do, but in different ways. You know, the logistics has to happen, the safety has to happen, the local connections has to happen. I think we should all endeavor to find that unique set of skills and how we contribute to this bigger thing.
Yeah. I like the tone that they both ended on. They were both like, yeah, if you want to do something, go do it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Both the Arctic writ large and Alaska more specifically, and the endeavor of doing science are huge. All of the things that all these people are having to put together from different angles, from different perspectives.
Yeah, that's the strength of Alaska Voices series, is that it brings in so many different perspectives and gets them all mixed up in a conversation. And
Yeah, whole human beings, you know, doing science, but also being people. Well, thanks for being here with me.
Thank you, Mike.
Alaska Voices is a place for communities to connect through conversation. This podcast was created with support from the Alaska Climate Adaptation Science Center and was the brainchild of Jesse Young Robertson and Bob Bolton. The Alaska Cask is committed to providing regionally relevant science for Alaska's changing climate. Alaska Voices would not be possible without the efforts of an amazing group of people. Our producer and audio engineer is Kelsey Skomberg of Mossy Stone Media. The Alaska Voices team includes Micah Hahn at the University of Alaska Anchorage, and Leah Ferguson, Mike DeLue, Susanna Caldwell, Annika Ord, and Georgia Hood at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. We would also like to thank the musicians whose songs we heard today. Our theme is Arctic Evening by Marcel Dupreez. We also played I'm Glad You're Here and Listening by Mon Plaisir, Washed Up by Holizna, and Dusty Chords by Raphael Archangel, as well as the following songs with Creative Commons Attribution licenses: Hibernation and Goldfinch Flight to the North Remastered by Axletree, all from the Free Music Archive. If you're interested in more conversations or information, please visit our website at alaskavoices.org. For Alaska Voices, I'm Mike DeLue.